All right, guys. So we are back again to the section of um, the back end. So we have completed the front end, right? We have completed the database installation and configuration in Google Cloud, which is the database managed database in GCP. Now we are going to be looking at deploying the backend application, the backend server, where the backend application is going to be running, and as well front end server where the front end application is going to be running. Right now, what we're going to do is first of all we need to create a VPC. When we are done with the VPC, we will create subnets. We're going to be creating two subnets, one for the backend and one for the front end, right? And then we also established a firewall for the both of them, and then configure and allow that the backend is meant and the front end is meant to access the backend at this particular port number, right? So let's head over to GCP and start with the VPC. All right, so this is our GCP platform, right? So we've logged in already. So what we go to this straight amber here is come down straight to the side where we have our VPC, right? So we click on the VPC networks. So it will open this way for us. So this is our network. So we're gonna go over to this place and then create VPC. I'll just click on this button. All right, so we now put the name. So the name should be hipaa VPC. All right, so here coming here, we're not going to be we're going to be creating a custom subnet, right? A custom subnet. Now come down here, we have the first subnet should be the backend subnet, right? So let's go back to our architecture. So here is our architecture. We say that this is going to be our subnet for the network, right? So let's put it's going to be like backend subnet, and then we'll put the name BAF for the backend subnet. Then the region should be I think we are using US region, US Central. It's okay. Then IP range, we are selecting this is going to be our IP setup block. Okay, so I think we need to remove space here. That's correct. Now down here, do we need a private connection? You don't need that, just leave that. Right, flow log, if you need to monitor our logs to capture some logs as traffic is moving through, that you can tick it so that maybe you can get the log and then push it to the data analysis teams or the servers. So that is actually how we do it. Now we have to come here and click on done. Then we will add another subnet again. So that subnet will be for front end subnet. So this is going to be for so we click on the region, we are selecting US Central, right? Now coming down here, we select what's going to be the private IP addresses. Top 2 right, yes. So let's put that down. Right, so coming down here, we still need to enable flow log if you need that. Okay, so done. So we have two subnet right now. Okay, then come down here, we are not creating any firewall yet. We're not creating any firewall yet, right? So we'll come to create subnet again. Let's create okay guys, we can see that we are now creating the VPC subnet. The hipaa VPC, right? still in process. Okay, guys, check this. We have finally created this VPC, and in there we have to subnet. What about firewall? No firewall. Look at it. So we have to head over in. So here is our subnet. Here is our subnet, the backend subnet, and the front end subnet, right? And this is their IP address respectively. Now, what we're going to be doing right now is that we're going to be creating a firewall, right? Firewall. So we get over to firewall side, right? And we have to add a firewall because there is no firewall here. We have to add firewall. So coming here, what we're going to be naming this is what? Backend firewall, right? So the backend firewall is to allow the front end. Backend firewall allows the front end. Then front end firewall allows everybody in the world to access it. So what we're going to do in here is that look at this raw store, right? So we're going to be creating a backend firewall, and we are tagging it with what? Front end tag, right? So maybe you can just tag it to be piece hipaa. Maybe this is going to be our tagging. Tagging should be hipaa, right? So we're going to be using hipaa to tag our firewall. So we come down to the firewall side, then we will now name it. So this is allow front end access to the back end on port 8080, right? So that is the port that's meant to be open. And then do we need log? Yes, we need log to know how many hits the firewall, how many captures or something like that, right? So we now come down to the point to say ingress is going to be ingress. Yes. What about this allow? Yes, we are specifying that we are specifying target, right? We're specifying target. I said the tag, we need to use tag, and the tag is going to be what? Hipaa, right? That's going to be the tag. Then we'll come down to the range. So we are specifying the IP address that should use. So what is going to be the IP address? The IP address should be the IP address of the backend server. This is, of the front end server. That is the IP address of the front end server. That's actually what we are going to be putting in there, right? Look at it here. So we're putting the IP address of the front end server. Okay, so that is actually the server, the system that should allow to access our environment. Another thing again is that then we need to put the port number, right? So TCP port 8080, right? So that's actual port that is meant to be accessed from the front end, right? So when we are done with this, right, we can now run create. Okay, we created this now. So this is how we create the firewall in GCP. All right, you can see that the firewall have been created. Possibly that you can see that we have this firewall, can establish and then expand it here. I see that the tag is what? The tag is hipaa. The tag is hipaa. Another thing again, come down here, you can see we have what? Hit count. Hit count means that how many persons have tried to access the server via that port. So you don't have no hits yet. No hits, which means that nobody have made a connection. Nobody have tried to make a connection to that port number on any server yet. All right. So we can create another firewall where someone like me will need to allow to access the server, right, via the public IP address, because I definitely may need to access the server. Okay. Possibly let's not access the server through the what would I say? Let's not access the server through the mobile extern. Right. So okay, let's access it through the mobile extern. Okay, I'll show us the way we can easily access the server. right? We can access it through mobile S-time, or we can access it through cloud what? Cloud share. Look at cloud share. You can access it through cloud share. It's better for us. Okay. Now now that we are done with this, right? We created this. So um let's create another firewall for the front end. So we're gonna be saying front end firewall. So front end firewall is what? Allowing all traffic on port 80 and what? 443. So we're going to be allowing this here for now. Maybe later we can remove the port 80, because port 80 can be used for something configuration, and after that we can just remove it and only allow port 443. You can put heat, then come down to this and put what? hipaa, right? So here should be the 0.0.0.0//0, which means all IP address in the whole world. We now specify the port number should be port this, comma port 443, right? So these are the actual port that's meant to be allowed. Okay. Yes, that's actual port that is meant to be allowed. Then the next thing I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to specify, okay, Amazon, I have to create. Okay, remember that we put the hipaa. So now I think that is a change we need to do. It's something that we need to do now. What is that? We have that the traffic that is going to this traffic actually is going to be going to all servers for the front end and for the back end. So what we need to do now is to say, okay, we need to specify the tag. It's going to be front end tag or back end tag, right? So we're gonna put it like this one that is back end. We can make it to be can make it to be like, anyway, it's okay. It's okay. No cause for alarm. I think it's okay. Now let's go to create virtual machines. This is our portal where we need to create virtual machines. So we're going to be creating like 2 virtual machines, one for the front end and one for the back end. Okay, and we specify the region. Remember that the region is going to be the one we have for the database, right? Look at it. So this is the region. So we have to ensure that we put the server in there. So let's create the server, which is the backend server. First, we click the backend server to create. Right. So what's the name of the server? We're going to call it what? Backend server. Right. So that's it. And we are specifying the US Central. All right. Any zone is okay. Then for the size of the virtual machine that we're going to be using, we're using what? E2. It is okay for what we want to deploy, and then 4 gig. You can choose to reduce it smaller, but it may not be able to carry your work to reduce. But this is okay for now, since it's majorly for our server work. We just maybe use this for now. Down here we need to change the come here. We need to check the look at it. Put this. Let's check this and then select the public image. So we select Ubuntu this place. We select Ubuntu, and then this is okay. This size is okay. Then we'll select. Then we'll come down to the point of allow firewall. If we click there, it's going to create a new firewall for us. But we don't want to use this firewall, right? We don't want to create a new firewall for ourselves because we have already done that before. Another thing is that, do we need to have a monitoring of like observability? Do we need to have that? Yes, we need to. You can click on install, and possibly also know that when you enable this monitoring and logging, right, your billing is also going to increase. Look at this. Let me untick that. You see, reduce. It's going to reduce, right? check. Let's check it again. I think it will reduce. Okay, I think varies. It varies. The price varies based on location. Now come to the advanced option. Under advanced option, we have the networking. Under networking, that's actually where provision the tagging. And the tagging we are using is what hipaa, right? So that was the tagging that we're using in this project. Remember the tagging, look at this. So let's see from the firewall side. Okay, right from the firewall side, look at the tag hipaa, right? So we have given it to hipaa. Now scroll down, we will see default. So it's selecting the network interface. So are we selecting default? No, we have a network, right? We call it what? hipaa BCP, VPC. So we select it, and the subnet is what? We have the front end and the back end. So this one that we're creating right now is a backend server. Select this, and then the next thing is what? We need to empirical, okay, variant what, which that's it's going to automatically provide a private IP address and also automatically provide a public IP address. Why do we need public IP address? Yes, we need public IP address, right? To like we need public IP address to like enable to access it outside, right? But when we are done with the configuration, then we can now disable that, right? So this is just like a simple demonstration of that about. So if you still want to add another different interface, we can add it here, right? But since we don't need it, that's nothing. Another thing again is that there is something that we need to do here to safeguard our virtual machine from some attacks like crypto mining attack, right? Using the operating system. So that's actually why we need to turn on all settings for the most secured configuration, right? Like this, turn on secured boot, so that as SATA is booting, no malicious script can be injected by any of these hackers. So that we're going to be turning this on, right? Another thing is this as well, right? So when we turn them on, that means that server is secured at the boot level. Okay. Then another one is manage access. Do you want to manage access through this or through SSH? You need to click on SSH, right? Or do you want to add an SSH key? So this is actually where you add your public key. This is where you add your public key so that you now use that public key to be able to log into the server, right? Now, coming down again is that we have the management environment where we need to put our bash script, right? This is where we'll now type the bash script, that is a bash script that is going to deploy the applications. And again is that the server is safe. The data in the server is also safe. So this is actually why we put it as well. Now let's already review all these things we just said earlier. Okay, coming down here, we talked about the backend server, the region we are putting it, the machine configuration, which is the machine type, the size of the machine, and then we talked about the image, the boot, which is where we selected Ubuntu 20 long-term support. We did not set firewall because we have already created a firewall already for ourselves. Then under observability, so we selected what monitoring and then logging ticket. Now coming down to network tagging, we specified that because this is actually what we use to tag to the firewall that we created earlier, right? Then the next is that we need to configure the interface, right? The interface we selected that is going to be connecting to that VPC we created earlier, and also the subnet. Automatically, a public IP address and a private IP address will be provided for the server. Then we now turn on all the secured boot so as to ensure that the server is secured at runtime, right? Because I told us the other time that we have three state of data: data in transit, data in motion, and data in process. So this particular shield is protecting the server, all right, as for data in process. All right, so this after then we don't have any bash script to run, then we can just do what? Create. So the server is going to be created. All right, so you can see that the server has been created. All right, now we need to connect to this server, right, via what? SSH. You can see this SSH. You can click like this and this will open for you. Okay, it will authenticate into this system, right, using what? using SSH connection. But before you can enable this, you need to like enable public access on the firewall level. You need to allow people to access the server outside, right? So you click on authorize and you need to log in for that to happen, right? But a couple of things that I need to do here. So I click on authorization. So it's authorizing. Start with support. We need to accept firewall. I don't need that. Okay, let me say I don't want to do that. Let me check. Let me check my firewall to know whether I configured that. This is the backend firewall. Let me know if I allowed public access to SSH. Okay, because I need to do that. So this firewall I created. Let me put public access. That is under command. I'll put command 22, and then I'll put what SSH, which is 0.0.0.0/0, right? So which means that I am going to be allowing people to access it publicly. But when I'm done with everything, I can come and update this firewall. Okay, so that they just save this firewall, because without this SSH and public access, I can't be able to log in to configure this server. Now that we have done this, right, we need to like if you still want to make this clear, if you still want to uh be kind of, you can edit it and then come down. Instead of putting this public IP address, right, putting the whole of this, you can specify your IP address. What is my IP? You can ask Google for your public IP address, which Google is also going to give you. This is my IP. What is my IP? You can get your IP address here. Look at it here. Copy it, then go to the firewall here. Instead of, you can just paste your IP address here, and that's it, right? So you're going to be allowed to access this server. And again, if you want to access this server from the Google Cloud Share, look at this Google Cloud Share, right? You can, first of all, you can open the Cloud Share. Let's open this Cloud Share here so that we can get the public IP address of the Cloud Share. So the Cloud Share is opening, right? We are opening the Cloud Share right now. We are opening the Cloud Share at the moment. So it's going to take a little time. So it's going to take a little time because I wanted to use Cloud Share to be able to access this connecting. Let's just give it a little time. Let's give it a little time. It's connecting. All right, so you can see that we are into the Cloud Share, right? This is the Cloud Share now. Okay, so look at this. So you can see that we are here at the Cloud Share. So the Cloud Share have opened. Let's just check the IP address. Curl ifconfig.io. So this is what we use to get the IP address of the Cloud Share. Can you see? So this is the IP address of the Cloud Share now, the public IP address. So we have to go. The Cloud Share is more or less like a virtual machine, okay, but it's account based. So this virtual machine is account based. It's a temporary virtual machine which you use to access the other servers privately. So what we'll do is that we go to the firewall and then add the Cloud Share IP address. Can you see the Cloud Share IP address? We'll add it here and save. So which means that instead of opening public everything, just open our own IP address and Cloud Share IP address, because these are the two places that we can be accessing the server from, right? So now the next thing, since we have already allowed the Cloud Share access to the server, we can now go to this. Look at this SSH. You cannot click on this SSH, but this three drop down, click on it and say view command, gcloud command. Click on it. Copy this command. So this command is the command we use to access the server, right? I'll copy this command and then run it in the Cloud Share. I'll run it in the Cloud Share by pasting it here. You can see I'm pasting it, and then it's going to take me, it's going to log me in. Okay, so it's gonna ask me to log in, so which I'm gonna be providing the credential for this cell as the password for this user. Yes, that I think that is okay. So I'm logging in. I'm logging in now. All right, so now let me try to connect again. I'm trying to connect in again now. Okay, saying this permission. All right, let me check again. So could not fetch the source. Okay, let's try again. This is another SSH client, third party tool. I want to use this to connect, but that is not actually what we're looking for. So let's try to use this one instead. Let me try to use this SSH key, authorized, says that gcloud could not fetch the source. So this is the server that I want to connect to. Let's try again. Why is it not connecting? Okay guys, I was able to log into the system. Look at it. Okay, let me just show you what happens, right? Actually, for me to use this for me to connect, all right, using this key, I didn't use actually this again, but rather I used normal SSH, this command here. But I did something on the firewall. Look at this. Let me go to the firewall so that to show you what I did. This is it, the CPU. This is the firewall. This is the yes, this is the firewall. Okay, so what I did is that I went on here, right, and allow this firewall. Look at this. This is what you are going to allow. If you click on this, if you allow this range of IP address, okay, you are allowing access of that SSH, right? So you click here from the Google Cloud to connect to that server. So that is actually what you're gonna do, all right? So let me see, I'm in there, right? So now this is actually, I just want to check here, right? So we will test the connectivity between the server to the database. We test the connectivity between the server to the database, right? This connectivity is what we're going to be testing at the moment. Back. Bring to the front. Okay, so we will be testing this connectivity, right, that need to pass and enter to the database. This connectivity is what I want to test right away. Okay, so how do we test that? Make it 4. How do we test that? Okay, let's test it at the moment. All right, so let's test this connectivity. Let me make it something shouty so that we will get that. So let's test this connectivity because the connectivity is coming from right from the server. Okay, so what we need to do here is that we need to install. I think we need to install MySQL client. right? MySQL client on this server. So let's head over to the server and do that. So I will come to the server, right? All right. So this is server. Remember that we have, this is our cd human, this is our directory. We have already cloned it. So let's all look for the, let's look for the the client. Let's search apt-catch, right? apt-catch search what are we searching? We are searching for what? MySQL client, to see if there is any MySQL client. You can see that we have MySQL client. MySQL client is here, right? So we have to install MySQL client, this one. We need to install it. Like I said, MySQL client is for us to use to test if the backend can really reach the database, right? You can do that. So we're used to apt to install MySQL client minus what? Minus square, just to start the installation. So let's get the credential, the creed of the MySQL. Let's get the creed of the MySQL. How do we go about that? Notepad. Get a notepad. Database is what? Our database host is, let's get our database host. What's our database host? Our database IP address is this. Remember that we are using this. Okay, this is public IP address, right? So we're going to test for connectivity between the public and the private as well. So this is the public IP address, and then our MySQL database username. What do we use? CIP. I will use a hipaa admin, right? Then password db password, say hipaa min, that's 1 2 3. So this is actually, you can make it strong if you want. You can make it strong. So this is actually what we have. So let's connect right now, but let's confirm this password is correct. I mean, the username is correct, and if possible, we can equally update the password. You can see this is username. Okay, see that we did not make that correct. So this is the username, and the password should be something like this. So copy this and then go to this place, and here we can say change password. We now need to open the new password. Look at it, new password. I say okay. So we have updated the new password. Alright, right? Okay, let us test. Let's test and see what happens. Now look at this. Now if you go to the database connection, this is where we have the firewall, right? It's under networking. You can allow, can deny. Remember that this is my local system. My local, I think my public IP address have changed. What is my public IP address? So let's get my public IP address. Okay, so this is now my new public IP address, right? I'll copy that. I can, if I want, I can change it to this. I can update this, right? But I don't want to update this. Now, look at this. The backend, now, right, is going to make a connection. Look at this, guys. The backend, right? The backend is going to make a connection to the database publicly, right, through the internet. So you're making a connection to the database, to the internet. Okay, DB. So if you're making a connection to the internet, it will pass through, and this is the it's going to pass through what, the internet. And besides, you are connecting with the public IP address of the what, of the database. Okay, so there is a firewall here that protects this uh, this connection. All right, there's a firewall here. So this firewall is protecting the access. So what you have to go is to go to the firewall and then allow the IP address of this guy that is trying to make a connection, and he's using his public IP address to make a connection, right? Since he's passing through the internet, he's using his own public IP address to connect to the system. So which means that you need to go here and permit that IP address of this guy, permit it, right? So let's assume that his IP address here is green. So this is IP, right? So you have to go to this place and permit that IP. Don't know if you get me. So permit that IP, and then this guy can now establish a connection to inside the server. If not, it will fail. Okay, let us first of all try it when we have not permitted, and then later we'll now try it when it has been permitted, so that you get that gist. Now head over to the server. Okay, look at it, right? We have already installed the stuff. Now, how do we make a connection to the database? Make a connection. Let's bring this stuff. Right? How do we make a connection now? So this is our connection string. We say what? MySQL minus U is for root username, hipaa admin. Then minus P is the password. Okay, which is what? Hipaa admin at 123. Then minus H is the host, just 34, right? .134.76. So we hit enter, right? You can see that it's trying to connect. Say using a password, yeah, no problem. But you see that it's still hanging here. It's hanging here because there is no firewall. Firewall is not allowing the IP address to make a connection. So who is really connecting? This server here you are seeing, this server here is the backend server. This is the backend server, right? Trying to connect to the database server, right? So the backend will try to connect using its own IP address, public IP address. So that public IP address needs to be permitted on the firewall so that it can be connected. Because looking at this now, you can see that it's not connected. It's not connecting. You can see it's not connected. It's supposed to connect one touch. So what we're going to do is that we need to head over to the browser and go and check what is the IP address. What's the public IP address of this backend? Look at the public IP address, right? We copy that. We go to the to this place and add another network. That is, this is the firewall, authorized network. This is just like a firewall. You can specify CIDR range to allow IP array range to access your instance. So we need to allow by saying the backend but public IP, right? We'll now paste it. So we are trying to permit it now. Okay, so this public IP, look at it here now, backend public IP. So we now have to save it. Okay, so when we save it, we just give it a little time for it to sync. So you need to sync. This is not turn green. After it have turned green, so we can now establish that connection again. Okay, so let's just give it a little time for it to save. It's trying to save it. Okay, so after it must finish saving it, then we can now try the connection again. Okay, we'll try this connection again. Okay, look at this now. It have connected. It have updated. So let's go again and try. Okay, look at this. Let's try again. Wow, you can see that it have connected immediately. It didn't even waste time. it have connected immediately because it's passing through the internet and it has been allowed on the firewall level. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So we can literally say was show databases, right? You can see that, sorry, show databases. I want to put S here. So you can see that we have all the databases here, right? But bear in mind that we just want to test connectivity from the server. We are testing the connectivity from the server. You're testing connectivity from the server. You need to test connectivity first before you start connecting, so that if you are trying to troubleshoot, you know where you are troubleshooting from, right? You know where you're troubleshooting from. So this is just for you to understand. But another way of testing, but that way of testing is on the Google Cloud really. Look at this here. You can test here since you're already on the connection. You're on the connection. You can come to what network connectivity testing. Connectivity testing. Click on it. So enable the API. So you need to enable the API for connectivity required testing, right? You need to enable it. Now you need to create a test connection, right? This test lets you check connectivity between network endpoints. It analyzes your configuration, and if the configuration is eligible, send packets through the live data plane. So you have to click here and say what's the name of my connection. I say what from backend to DB connection context. So like from backend to DB context. This is not it's not mandatory. This is just like optional. You are trying to test from the cloud, not from the try to test now. So we now come down. Current. So what is going to be your source? Source means that where are you testing from? Like where are you testing from? So we are testing from this to destination, right? So from our backend server to, so we have to have to say other options. So what's the backend server? You select virtual machine, and this is our backend server, right? Select it. Which interface do we want to use? We look for the interface. So you see that it's trying to test the private IP address. Now, if you say destination, current MySQL server is testing, right? Now, bear in mind, sorry. So let us not say we are actually testing the virtual machine, because if you select virtual machine, it's going to test us the IP. It's going to select the private IP address. But we select the select IP. Okay, we select IP. Then we need to put the IP address of the backend server. Look at it. The IP address of the backend server. You have to paste it here. So that is actually where we're testing from. From that, this is the server, right? Then we now say, okay, which particular system are we testing it to? We are testing on the database server, right? And which port are we looking at? What's the port number of MySQL? Is 3306, right? So that's the port number of the database. So we create a connection. We are creating a connection. Look at it now. A connection has been created, and immediately it's created, it will start testing. And if you check here now, you can see that it's saying here reachable. You see that it's reachable, so you can view it. You can view. Now, if you bring it up here, it says that the testing started from what? From the backend. So it's from the backend VM. It moved down to what? To the firewall rule. It come down to the static routes. It come down to the NAT. It come down to the packets could be delivered. So you span them to see that network interface is this, IP address is this, and public IP address is this, right? Then if you open the file, the egress firewall rule, egress, the firewall rule, this is the firewall rule that allow that port that is on the virtual machine, that is backend servers. They're still on. Then this is the route that allow that traffic to move out, right? And then this is the NAT for the database connecting to the database now, well under the port is right. And then finally it delivered to the system package reaches. So which means that we're able to reach. So this is how you test connection, right? This is how you test connection when you are doing some testing. Now we can delete that if you want, and delete it. Then again is that now we have done this now, we may likely not need public IP address LAN to this system. May not need public IP address LAN to this. So what we're going to be using is the private IP address. But looking at this now, we have public IP address, right? But there's no private IP address. Like I said earlier, that we need private IP address on the server. So since that the traffic, we don't need it to pass through the internet. So which means that the database is in a virtual in a VPC, right? In a VPC database VPC SDD. Then we also have the backend. We also have the backend VPC backend. Backend VPC, and the backend server is running in there. So I told you that what Google will do when you create managed database on Google and you're trying to use your backend to connect to the database, right? So if you enable private connection, do you know what they will do? They will create what? They will create like what? VPC pairing between VPC pairing between these two systems. Okay, they'll create a VPC pairing between these two systems. That is VPC pairing. They'll create VPC pairing between these two systems so that the traffic will go through what? Privately. This is private connection, right? Between this is private. But you know that the one we tested before was public. So what we're going to do here now is that we need to enable that. Instead of it going through the internet, right? Instead of it going to the internet, it will go privately, which is this particular one. Okay, so let us configure that. How do we go? You go to the database, right? And go to the connectivity. Under the connectivity, you would select networking. Good. Let me show you something else. Before you click that, let us check VPC pairing and see whether we have any pairing yet. Okay, let's see if there's any pairing existing. Now look at this. There's no pairing. There's no VPC pairing. Can you see? No VPC. If you want, you can create new one. There's no VPC. But see what happens when we finish enabling this private IP address. Now you will see that there's going to be a pairing between these two servers, these two VPCs. When you click on this, right, it will ask you for which associated network. Which network do you want to associate it with? What it's asking you is that you need to identify this VPC. It's telling you are trying to initiate it, right? It's asking you which network do you want it to connect to. That is that network that is going to be pairing with. That's what it's asking to select. Then we'll not say which network do we created for the backend server, which is what hipaa VPC. That's hipaa VPC. Then it now say what private service access connection require. Your network this require a private service access connection. This connection enable your service to communicate exclusively by using internal IP address. So if you say setup, it will come here and tell you private service access connection are per VPC network and can be used across all managed services such as what memory store, TensorFlow. That's for data engineering guys that understand this, data science guys. are between this one. So they are trying to stay clear to what to say was are between your VPC network and the network owned by Google using a VPC pairing. So the network owned by Google is where the database is stored, right? So they are going to, you did not set up that database VPC. You did not set up that database VPC. I repeat, this database now, you did not set up the VPC. What you set up was your own backend VPC. So now they are saying for you to enable this VPC, private IP address on this database, right? You need to do what? You need to set up, Google will set up a VPC pairing between Google own network and your own network, right? Enabling your instance and services to communicate effectively by using internal IP address. Create an isolated project for you, so they're telling you just what to do. But then we are done with that. We just enable the what? Enable service networking IP. Service networking IP is what they are going to be using for that allocation, right? So it's trying to enable that. So we have to select one or more existing IP range, right? We don't need any IP range. We don't need anyone. We can just say allocate a new one. So sometimes we don't need to allocate one, just delete that and say we need it to use automatic what? IP range, automated allocated IP range. So it will just select that for us. Then we continue, right? And then create connection. Now it's gonna take a little time for it. So but let's refresh this thing and know when it's gonna create this VPC pairing. Let's know when it's gonna create the VPC pairing. So it has not yet created it. You can see that it's still creating connection. So it's gonna provision VPC pairing for us. Just bear that in mind. To create a VPC pairing, just be watching when the VPC pairing will land. VPC pairing is going to land very soon. VPC pairing is going to land very soon between Google own network. Wow, can we see that this is your VPC and this is the pairing network, the paired network, which is what? Service network. So then that's their name, their own, right? You can see that it's having established and it's now active. Okay, so this is not a magic, this is real. So you can see that if you open it now, you can expand it, you can literally see it's a peer network, peer VPC network connected, right? Your own network is this. Paired network is that's their Google own, right? That's exactly what it's telling you right now. So now if you go back to this place and it's saying what? Private service access connection for this has been successfully created. Can you see? Successfully created. Now, can we remove public IP address? Yes, we can do that. How can you do it? You can do it by saying what? Untick this alone. By unticking this stuff, you have removed public IP address. By ticking it alone, you have removed public IP address. Okay? Now let's save it now. You will see that there is not going to be any public IP address, but there's going to be private IP address. Okay, let's just wait a little, just give it a little time. So it will just show you that there's not going to be any public IP address but private. If you still want, you can come and enable public IP address as well. So it's not a problem, but it's just for testing. When you have tested and you see that public address is working, then you can disable it, because it's not ideal to have public IP address land on the database server. All right, so as we are doing that, let's wait for it, because we still need to test again with private IP address. I mean, we need to test. We need to test, right, by going to the server using the private IP address. That private IP address, we need to use it and test. Pass through this tunnel, right? Pass through the tunnel and then connect to the database. Okay, that's actually what we want to achieve now. But let's just give it a little time for it to sync, because it's trying to sync, right? It's trying to sync the changes that we have made so far. trying to sync it. And after syncing, then we can now be able to do what? We can now be able to connect. All right, you can see that it has synced already. So what next we're gonna do right now is that we need to test that connection again. Bear in mind that I don't. Why I will permitted this on the firewall is because we wanted to connect on the firewall, right? So we don't need this anymore. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Just bear that in mind. So let us start establish another connection and see what happens. Now I want to connect again, but I'm not going to be using the private IP address because the server do not have public IP address again. Sorry, I'm not going to be using public IP address because the server do not have public IP address again. Got it? There's no public IP address again, but rather private IP. Okay, so private IP is what we have now. So let us check. Let us connect with the public IP address currently. So we have to remove this and then put the private IP address and then try to connect. Can we see that we are connected? Can you see that we are connected? So since that we are inside the same VPN connection, VPC pairing have been established, so we don't literally need to put a firewall again. We don't really need to go and add firewall again, except if we are going to be connecting outside this network jurisdiction. That is when we need to connect, add the firewall to allow certain IP address that is trying to connect to the database. Okay. All right. So that is just about the connection. Okay. Right now we've known that. Okay. Right now we've known that we were able to connect to the database, right? And then we also say that we have the Google Studio, right? The Google Studio, look at it here. We have Google Studio we can use to walk around the manage the database right on the Google Cloud portal. That is Google Cloud Studio, Cloud SQL Studio. We use to manage this database right from the Google Cloud portal by putting the database name. By putting the database that we just maybe it is. Select the username, put the password. Okay, put the password like what's going to be the password? hipaa admin as 123. Okay, let's check it. It's correct. So you can see that we authenticate into the database. You can see that we are authenticated, and you can literally see everything, most of the things here. These are the four databases that we have. And then again, I say you can create your own. You can create what? Say create database my DB. Okay, hipaa DB. So you can see that I will create the database here, but it will show the other side. Look at it run. Right, the database has created, and you will see it here. Watch here. If you refresh this now, you will see the hipaa, which is, you see it here. Look at the database. Can you see database? So now let's see. This is database. There is no table, no view, no event, no function. No. If you have logged into this, you can also show databases. Okay, and if you click it, you can see that database that we created. Look at it here. I can equally delete it by saying drop database. I can say drop what database, drop hipaa DB, and it's drop database hipaa. So it have dropped it. Let's share it. Let's try to show again. You can see there is no hipaa again. Now let's refresh this again. You now see that it has been wiped off. No database again. Right? So just that to show you. Now that we have already established that our server can connect to the database, Let's log out. So I'm just taking it bit by bit so that you get that clearly. So now that you have established that database can connect, so what we need to now is to head over. Okay, let's get the the private IP address of this database and update our credentials, right? Database credential on their notepad. So I have to remove this one and put the password. I mean, put the private IP address. Now let's go to the backend. This is the backend server, right? And then we need to Marvin have been installed. Version have been installed. Look at it. We have Marvin this, and we equally have Java version 7.0, right? So what we do now is that we need to go to source, main, resource, right? And then open the application.property so that we can configure the database credential. Now no to what? Application.property. Then we now say, okay, look at the place we need to change the stuff, right? So we have to come down here and then put in private IP address. The private IP address is what we're going to be put in here. Put the private IP address. You can see that we put that, right? There was the username. This is the username, right? So we come down to username instead of root. Put the original username. So the username is here. So what is the password? We call the password, right? Come down here and put the password. Okay, this is it. And then when we are done with that, you can see that something you need to know here is that you can see that it says what when we are trying to create, it's going to create a database called dental management system, right? But we don't want that name. You can call it what? Hospital management system. Hospital management system. That is the database we're going to create for us, and that is the database we're going to be using throughout. Okay, so we create. Now we're not going to use what? Marvin clean package. Bear that in mind that we need to be in the root directory HMS. We need to be where pom is, right? So we have Marvin clean package. So it's start. All right. So we run the Marvin clean package. All right. So it will now package the application for us. After packaging the application, we'll have the endpoint, and then we'll now run the application. Okay. So it's running the application. It's testing and packaging it. Okay, it's testing and packaging the application right now. All right, you can see it was successful. All right, so let us check cd slash okay tar. Let's check the application. The application is named dental management system, right? So we have to run it now. You have to run it by saying what? Dental management system. Java manager dental something, and we'll start the application. You see that the application have started now. Okay, so now that we have started the application, what we need to identify here is this. All right, so there's something called, we need to test the endpoint. We need to test the application and see the documentation of this particular endpoint that this application is serving, right? Because it's the endpoint that the front end is going to connect to. Okay, it's the endpoint that the front end will be connecting to and uses to. Like, just for example, we have the This is the backend right now. This is the backend. Let's say this is the backend. So the backend have different like user module. We have the hospital module, appointment module, and so many other modules, right? So the front end positions here, the front end need to connect to the endpoint of the backend, right? Need to connect to the endpoint of the backend so that if users, ordinary users, right, are coming into the environment, ordinary users are trying to create an account, they will use their mobile phone or their laptop, they will use the URL and connect to their local system, fill some form. If it's they are creating a user, they'll fill some form, right? And when they fill the form, they click submit. When they submit, what happens? The front end receives it and forward it to the endpoint. If it's a user, look at it, for this is a user module for the backend. This user module for the backend. So immediately the data will straightly go to the user module backend logic, right? And the backend logic will process the data and then forward it where and push it to what? To the database. Let's say this is the database. Since it's connected to the database, it will move the database and store it there, right? And store that to the database table. So that is actually what happens, right? So this is the business logic that does this. Okay, now what I want you to know is that we can literally evaluate, you can literally see all the endpoints that the backend is serving, even though that the backend is not meant to be accessed on publicly, right? But the developers prepare what called documentation that will help front-end engineers to use the backend. For the front-end engineers to use these modules, there is a documentation that the backend guys will prepare, and that is what we call like Swagger documentation. Swagger documentation, right? So let us go and look at the documentation of this backend. Call it Swagger. Swagger. Right? Let's look at it. So now that we have the database running, okay, we can look at, this is the URL of the database. The URL of the backend and the port number. Then we'll have to put /swagger -ui.html. If you hit enter, let me pick this. So if we hit enter, we'll get the Swagger documentation of that endpoint. Look at it. So this is the Swagger documentation. Now, if you check here now, we have how many modules? We have appointment controller, right? We have what? Doctor controller. We have patient controller. And we have user controller. So for you to create users, is this controller that we use? You see that these are the things you can do. You can create a user, that is post operation. Login, post operation. You can get a user by ID, you can get a user by gender, you can delete a user, and you can get a user role. Okay, now that is for the users. Now this is the patients. For patients, you see that we have get all patients, patient blood group. You can get patient blood group and patients, right? Then this is for doctor control. So for doctor control, we have what? We have register a doctor. You can register a doctor. You can get specification, right? You can get doctor by name. You can get all doctors. This last one is appointment. So under appointment, you have the all appointment. The doctor, get this, update appointment. You can see add appointments. You can see update appointments, patients. So these are endpoints. So the developers now will know how to use it. If you want to get this one now, you can click there. You can see the logic that these are the things that it needs. These are the credential that the backend is expecting from the front end.
So the front end will give the back end this